Okay, so this is our turning movement count study, and my name is Mark Vandewater.
I am Eli Lovelace.
I'm Arthur DeJesus.
I am Caleb Pilgrim.
Turning movements refer to the direction vehicles take at an intersection, including left turns, right turns, through movements at each approach. The data is useful for analyzing and timing signals as well as determining capacity. This study measures the departure volumes, which refer to vehicles that are counted once they enter the intersection and exit through their specific movement, which differs from an arrival volume in queuing.
And the objectives of this study were to collect data for the turning movements at each of the approaches and use that following data for PHF calculations to then produce a traffic diagram. The location and conditions for this study were the intersection of South Marietta Parkway and Technology Parkway, just outside of the Marietta campus of Kennesaw State University. The study was completed from the hours of 11 to 12 on Tuesday, September 17th, 2024, and the weather was mostly sunny. And as can be shown on the map, that's the intersection where the study was taken, with all four of the approaches and a north arrow to delineate the contextual north for this study.
The table on the left is a sample of the data that was collected from the study. The sample shows that the turning movement for the data for South Marietta Parkway going eastbound. The highlighted values in the middle show the peak 15-minute flow for cars going straight, as well as the total number of cars going straight. These two data points are used to calculate the peak hour factor for this specific movement through the intersection. The highlighted values on the right are used to calculate the peak hour factor for all the cars entering the intersection eastbound. The table on the right is a small sample of the peak hour factor calculations. The highlighted value shows the peak hour factor for the whole intersections, which is 0.79. This is a useful statistic for determining if the traffic is spread out over time or happens at a very specific time period. The image on the left shows the graphical summary of the turning movement study. It should be noted that the map has been simplified and is not the scale of the actual intersection. The direction of traffic as well as the street names are listed. The small boxes in the middle show the number of cars that made a specific movement through the intersection. In the top left, you can see that the total vehicles entering the intersection ended up being 2,108 vehicles entering from east to west and 351 vehicles entering from the north and south, with the total number of vehicles entering the intersection being 2,459.
Okay, so the results of the study showed that the highest traffic volume occurred with vehicles entering the intersection from the east and westbounds on South Marietta Parkway. There were 944 vehicles that entered from the east and 1,164 vehicles from the west. This accounted for 85% of the vehicles. Therefore, traffic was not evenly distributed among all approaches, but this was expected due to South Marietta Parkway being the main road. The movements with higher traffic volumes are shown in the image on the left. These were going straight through the intersection going east or west, as well as turning left onto Technology Parkway and turning right onto South Marietta Parkway from Technology Parkway. The peak hour factors ranged from 0.5 to 0.92, and the weighted average of all peak hour factors was 0.82. This indicates that traffic is spread out relatively even throughout the hour, with a value of 1 representing a perfect distribution. Lastly, the percentage of heavy vehicles was only 4.7%, with the majority going straight through the east and westbound approaches. A higher percentage of heavy vehicles would likely reduce the amount of cars that would be able to make it through the intersection due to their slower acceleration. Some potential factors that may have affected the data would include pedestrians, time of day, and weather and location. Heavy pedestrian traffic through the intersection may reduce the flow of cars through the intersection per hour due to longer signal timing. This study was also conducted around peak lunch hours. However, peak afternoon hours may have higher traffic volumes due to everyone getting off work or school all at once. Weather may also affect this. Rain and foggy weather would cause drivers to drive more slowly and cautious, therefore reducing the number of cars that made it through the intersection at one time. And lastly, the close proximity to a college campus is also a factor, which explains the particularly high number of vehicles making left turns from the eastbound approach.
In general, the eastbound and westbound movements had the highest volumes. The peak hour observed at South Marietta Parkway eastbound was at 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. with a PHF of 0.79 on the intersection and a total of 2,459 vehicles observed. Some recommendations that we have is further studies such as queuing could be used to analyze signal timing to avoid users waiting through more than one cycle of the traffic light. Some improvements to data collection could be implementing automatic counters for each lane. This is our effort statement. Our references and questions are welcomed as well as our graphs.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Yo.